I married a pastor, but I never knew how heavy that life would be. People saw us as perfect, holy, untouchable. But behind closed doors, my tears fell every night. I thought love and faith would protect me, but instead, they became my prison. This is not just a story of love and marriage. It is a confession of secrets, sacrifice, and betrayal, and maybe the hardest truth I have ever spoken out loud. Asterisk. When I first met him, he wasn't standing on a pulpit. He wasn't preaching to a crowd. He was just a man sitting quietly in the corner of a small church gathering. His eyes were calm, his smile was warm, and when he spoke to me, it felt like the world slowed down. He said, "You seem like someone searching for peace." And in that moment, I believed he could be the answer. I was young, only 22, still trying to figure out what life meant, what love meant. And he was older, wiser. Everyone looked up to him, not just as a pastor, but as a man of faith, of guidance, of strength. And when he chose me, the congregation whispered, "She is so lucky." And maybe I thought our courtship was fast, too fast. But in those early days, everything felt pure. We would sit on church benches after the service, talking for hours. He would tell me about his dreams, how he wanted to build a family that lived with faith, that stood as an example. And I would nod, thinking that was my dream too. I wanted to belong to something bigger than myself, to someone who had direction, who had purpose. My family adored him. My mother would always say, "You found a good man, don't let him go." And my father, though quiet, would smile in approval. In their eyes, he was safe, stable, a provider. We had a wedding that looked like a fairy tale. The church was filled with flowers, the choir sang hymns that echoed through the walls. When I walked down the aisle, everyone turned, their faces glowing with admiration. I wasn't just marrying a man. I was marrying into an image, a story, an expectation. And at that moment, I thought I could handle it. The first year was like living in a dream. He prayed with me every morning, held my hands at night. He told me, "You are my blessing, my gift from God." And I wanted to believe it with all my heart. But sometimes in the silence, I would notice how his eyes wandered, how he became distant when we weren't in front of others. Still, I brushed it away. Because love, especially young love, can be blind. We would attend family gatherings together, and everyone admired us. My sisters would tease me, "You've married the perfect man." And I would laugh, pretending it was true. But deep down, there were already cracks. Small ones, easy to ignore, but present. Like the way he would sometimes scold me if my dress was too modern. Or how he reminded me, a pastor's wife must always be careful. At first, I thought it was just his way of protecting me, of guiding me, but slowly it began to feel like control. Still in those early days, I convinced myself it was love, that it was care, not restriction. Because when he smiled at me, when he told me he loved me, the doubts melted away, at least for a little while. Our bond looked strong on the outside, but I was already learning appearances can be deceiving. And little did I know that small seed of doubt was only the beginning. Because soon something would happen that would shake the foundation of everything I thought was true. At first, I told myself this was the life I had prayed for. Every Sunday, I stood beside him, smiling as he preached to the crowd. People would shake my hand and whisper, "You are so blessed." The older women would call me First Lady of the church. It sounded powerful, beautiful, important. But in reality, it was heavy. I had to look perfect, act perfect, even feel perfect, even when I wasn't. Every word I spoke was watched. Every choice I made was judged. Even my laughter had to be measured. Because in their eyes, a pastor's wife was not a woman, she was a symbol. And symbols are not allowed to be human. Still, I tried. I tried to be what he and the church expected. Cooking meals for guests, visiting the sick, teaching Sunday school. I told myself, this was love, this was purpose. But sometimes late at night when I lay beside him, I felt more like a decoration than a wife. He was kind in public, gentle in front of others. But behind closed doors, his words could cut like a knife. "You embarrass me today," he would say if I stumbled over a verse. A pastor's wife should know better. He would remind me if I laughed too loud. I swallowed my pain, told myself he was right. But slowly it began to eat me from the inside. The man I loved was turning into a shadow, and I was disappearing under his light. Yet, I held on because love makes us blind. Because when he held my hand in front of others, when he told the church how much he loved me, I believed him, even when my heart whispered doubts. We traveled together, preaching in small towns. I would sit in the front row, listening to him, clapping for him, praying for him. Sometimes, I caught women staring at him, smiling at him, and something inside me twisted. Was it jealousy or fear? I brushed it off, told myself, they admire him for his faith. But a voice inside me whispered, what if they admire him for more? I hated that voice, but it never went away. The cracks in our bond were getting bigger. Small arguments turned into silence. Smiles turned into duties. Kisses turned into performances. But to the world, we were perfect, untouchable, enviable. And maybe that was the biggest lie of all. One evening, after a long day of church visits, I looked at him, his Bible still in his hand, and I asked softly, do you love me? Or do you love the image of us? He looked at me, and instead of answering, he walked away. That silence said more than any word could. My heart sank, but I stayed quiet, because to speak the truth would mean shattering everything. And I wasn't ready, not yet. But deep down, I felt it. The ground under us was trembling. Something was coming. Something that would break us. At first, I thought I could live with the pressure. But slowly, it began to suffocate me. Everywhere we went, people looked at him with awe. They treated him like a saint, a man above men. And I was just his shadow. They praised his sermons, his wisdom, his smile. But no one ever asked if I was happy. No one saw the cracks in my heart. Sometimes, at church dinners, I would hear whispers, she is lucky to have him. He could have married anyone. I smiled politely, but those words burned inside me. Because I began to wonder, was I really lucky or was I trapped? The truth is, he was not always cruel. He could be gentle, soft, even tender. He would hold my hand when I cried. He would pray for me when I felt weak. Those moments gave me hope. Hope that maybe love would win. But hope is fragile, and mine was breaking. Because for every kind touch, there was a cold command. For every gentle prayer, there was a sharp rebuke. For every promise of love, there was silence in the night. The balance was slipping, and I felt myself falling. One evening, after a sermon that left the whole town in tears, we returned home, and I tried to talk to him. I told him how proud I was, how moved I was. He looked at me, and instead of smiling, he said, you did not stand tall enough beside me. People notice these things. I froze. His words pierced me. I wanted to scream, what about me? What about my heart? But the words never left my lips. Instead, I nodded, ashamed of something I did not even do. And that night, I cried into my pillow silently. Because in his world, there was no room for weakness, not even mine. The church adored him more each day. Young women admired him, their eyes shining with something I recognized too well. And though I trusted him, though I wanted to trust him, I felt fear creeping in. Fear that one day, I would no longer be enough. That someone else would take my place, not in the church, but in his heart. I hated those thoughts, but they haunted me. And sometimes, when he came home late, I would wonder, was he really at a meeting? Or was there another reason for the smell of perfume on his clothes? I wanted answers, but I stayed silent. Because silence was safer than the truth. Still, my silence grew heavier each day. It was turning into chains wrapping around my soul. And every smile I forced, every prayer I whispered was breaking me a little more. Until one night, while sitting at the edge of our bed, I realized something. I was living in his shadow, but I was losing myself. And if something did not change soon, I would disappear completely. The cracks were not just cracks anymore. They were wounds, deep bleeding. And I knew sooner or later, those wounds would explode. Because a heart can only stay silent for so long. Days passed, but the weight in my chest grew heavier. He continued his sermons, his meetings, his prayers. And I continued to smile, nod, pretend. Pretend that everything was fine when it was not. I started noticing little things, small secrets, hidden messages. A text that he quickly hid, a call he answered in whispers. I wanted to ask, but fear stopped me. Because I knew questions could bring anger, or worse, silence. His love felt conditional, tied to my obedience, to my perfection. And every day, I felt myself slipping further. At church gatherings, his gaze would wander, just slightly. Not enough for anyone else to see. but enough for me to feel the sting. I hated myself for noticing, for feeling jealous, for doubting, but my heart refused to stay quiet. One evening, he returned home later than usual. I noticed a faint scent of perfume on his collar. I froze, my stomach churned. I wanted to ask, but the words caught in my throat, because asking could mean trouble. And trouble in a house like ours was dangerous. Still, I couldn't sleep that night. I lay awake, listening to the sounds of the house. The creak of the floor, the hum of the refrigerator. Every sound made my heart jump, because I was waiting for a moment I didn't want to happen, for something I feared. The next morning, I tried to act normal, but his eyes avoided mine just slightly, not enough for anyone else to notice, but enough for me to feel the distance. And that distance hurt more than anger, more than betrayal, because I could see it even if no one else could. The bond we built, the trust, the love, it was starting to crack. And I knew the cracks would widen fast. Even our friends, our family began noticing. They would ask, "Are you both okay?" I would smile, nod, and say, "Yes, everything is fine." But inside, everything was not fine. I could feel the tension building. Every touch felt heavier, every smile forced. I began to dread the nights, the silent moments, the empty conversations. And deep down, I knew this was the calm before the storm. The day when everything we built, everything we believed, would be tested. A day when I would have to face the truth. And I was not sure if I was ready. But ready or not, it was coming. The signs were everywhere, hidden, subtle, but impossible to ignore. A letter left on his desk, a hidden message on his phone. A late-night meeting he didn't explain. Each small clue a warning. And yet, I clung to hope. Because hope is what keeps a heart from breaking completely. But that hope was fragile like glass. And I knew sooner or later, it would shatter. And when it did, nothing would be the same. The life I thought I had, the man I thought I loved. All of it was about to change. And I could feel it like a storm rolling in. Silent, inevitable, unstoppable. I tried to ignore it, but ignoring the truth never works. Because one day, the mask falls. And the real person, the real story is revealed. That day it was coming. And I could no longer pretend. I had a sinking feeling in my chest. That everything I believed, everything I held on to would break. And I wasn't sure if I could survive it. One evening, I walked into our bedroom and froze. The room smelled of perfume, not mine. His Bible was on the floor, open to pages scattered. My heart pounded. I wanted to scream, but my lips wouldn't move. I saw his phone on the nightstand, buzzing. A message popped up, my name in it, but not like a wife's name. It was another woman. I stared at it, unable to breathe. The words, "Can't wait to see you tonight," burned into my mind. I wanted to cry. I wanted to hit something. But I couldn't. I was frozen. He walked in, smiling, unaware that I knew. "Why do you look so tense?" he asked casually. I felt my world collapse. I whispered, "Who is she?" He laughed softly, a sound that used to come from me. "What are you talking about?" he said. I held the phone in front of him, my hand shaking. And for the first time, I saw hesitation in his eyes. Not guilt, not shame, just a flicker of fear. My body shook, my mind screamed. "You lied to me. You betrayed me. Everything we built, everything we promised was a lie," I shouted. He tried to explain, but the words sounded hollow. I didn't want to hear excuses. I only felt pain, a deep, crushing betrayal. I ran out of the room, tears streaming. I couldn't trust him, not anymore. That night, I sat alone in the kitchen, staring at the dark. Every memory we shared, every promise he made, felt tainted. I tried to understand, how could he do this? And then a thought hit me. If he could betray me once, he could betray again. I could not let this continue. Not to myself, not to anyone else. The seed of revenge was planted, quietly, dangerously. I began to watch him, notice patterns, who he called, where he went. It was risky, but necessary. I couldn't confront him, yet, not until I was ready. Because one wrong move, and everything would fall apart. The next day, I went through his things discreetly. Hidden receipts, secret accounts, unexplained trips. Evidence of a life he never shared, a life outside our marriage. My hands shook, my mind raced. I realized I could use this, I could turn it around. But I had to be careful. If someone found out I was snooping, I would be in danger too. That fear made my pulse quicken, made every breath shallow. I had never felt this alive or this terrified. The betrayal was a wound, deep, raw. And now it was also a weapon. I began making plans, small steps, testing the waters. A hidden folder on my computer, documents I could leak if needed. I observed him at church, at home, during meetings. Every misstep, every lie noted, stored, remembered. It became a game, dangerous, thrilling. The first move, I decided, would be subtle. Nothing too obvious, just enough to shake him. I could feel the power shifting slowly. And the fear he once instilled in me began to feel real for him. I realized this was the only way to survive. Because if I did nothing, I would be lost. And I could never allow that, not again. The betrayal had changed everything. But it also gave me control. And for the first time since that message appeared on his phone, I felt alive. The days after I discovered his betrayal, I couldn't sleep, couldn't eat, couldn't think. Every corner of our house reminded me of lies, of secrets. I walked past his study, the Bible open, the chair empty. And I realized nothing would ever be the same. I had to act. But I couldn't rush. One wrong move, and I would destroy myself too. So I began observing him quietly, carefully. Every call he took, every message he sent, every late-night errand. I took notes in my journal, hidden under my bed. I recorded patterns, timings, people he met. It was dangerous, but I felt alive. For the first time since we married, I was in control. I started imagining what I could do, what I could reveal, what I could expose. The thought thrilled me, terrified me, because I knew if anyone found out, everything would collapse. I couldn't trust the church, not even my closest friends. They would take his side, or worst, question me. So I kept my plans secret, even from those I thought I could trust. At night, I would sit by the window, the city lights glowing, and imagine his shock when the truth came out. Every lie, every hidden moment would be exposed. I imagined the fear in his eyes, the disbelief, the humiliation. And for a moment, I allowed myself to smile. But then reality returned. This was not a game. If I miscalculated, I could lose everything. Not just him, but my freedom, my reputation, my life. So I moved slowly, deliberately. I created hidden folders on my computer, backups of his messages, secret accounts, evidence of meetings. I memorized phone numbers, emails, anything that could help me. Every night, I reviewed the plan step by step. I imagined confronting him, but not yet. The timing had to be perfect. A wrong confrontation could destroy me. So I waited, watched, learned. Meanwhile, he continued as if nothing had happened. Smiling in church, preaching, holding hands with me in public. The contrast made my blood boil. How could he act like a saint while betraying me behind closed doors? And yet, I reminded myself, patience was my ally. Every lie he told, every hidden secret was a piece of my weapon. One evening, he received a call, hushed, urgent. I watched from the doorway, pretending to read a book. And I knew I had to gather more evidence. I couldn't afford mistakes. If the wrong person saw me snooping, if someone accused me, everything would crumble. Fear became my companion. And excitement. I had never felt this alive or this dangerous. The planning consumed me, my mind raced. I imagined each scenario, each possible outcome. Would he deny it, lie, blame me? Would the church believe me or him? Every question strengthened my resolve. I couldn't stop now. I would not stop now. The first move had to be subtle. Enough to shake him, to make him fear. But not enough to ruin me. I waited for the perfect moment. Every day, I added to my arsenal. Evidence of betrayal, proof of lies, patterns of deceit. And slowly the plan began to take shape. I could see the end. I could see him exposed, powerless, and finally afraid. The thrill of that thought made the pain of betrayal almost bearable. But danger lurked. One mistake, one wrong glance, one accidental word could ruin everything. And yet, I could not stop. Because I had no choice. If I stayed silent, I would be destroyed. I had to act. I had to plan. I had to survive. The day finally came. I decided to make my first move. It had to be careful, subtle, just enough. I couldn't risk being caught. I waited until he left for a meeting. Then I accessed his study, the locked drawer, the hidden files. My hands shook, my heart pounded. Everything he thought was private was now mine. I copied emails, messages, financial records. Every hidden call, every secret meeting documented. It was thrilling, terrifying, empowering. I knew he would never expect it, and the thought made me smile, quietly. I hid the files, secure, safe, ready for the right moment. Then I sent an anonymous message to someone who mattered. A friend of the church, someone who could influence others. I didn't want to expose him completely yet, just enough to make him sweat, to make him realize I was not powerless. Hours later, I watched him check his phone. His face went pale. I didn't see fear, not yet, just confusion. But I knew it was coming. The first ripple had started. He paced, muttering, calling someone, trying to figure out what had happened. And I watched from a distance, hidden, heart pounding. It felt like justice, small but real. That night, he didn't speak to me. Not a word, not even a glance. I pretended to sleep, listening, waiting. Every creak of the house, every breath he took felt like a victory. The next day, he was distant, cold, distracted. I could see him calculating, trying to find out who had interfered. And that knowledge, his unease, gave me strength. But I knew it was only the beginning. Because one move is never enough. I had to plan the next carefully. I started leaving small hints, documents slightly visible, emails accidentally open. A subtle fear began creeping into his eyes. He didn't know yet who was behind it, and I was careful, never revealing too much, never leaving proof. Every step, measured, deliberate, calculated. I imagined his panic, his confusion, the way he would question his own choices. It thrilled me, gave me a sense of control I hadn't felt in months. But with each action, I felt danger, closer. If anyone discovered my plan, if someone exposed me, it would all backfire. And yet, I couldn't stop. The betrayal had changed me, made me sharper, more aware. Every interaction, every smile, every prayer now had a hidden meaning. Even his casual touch made my blood run cold. Because I knew it could never be the same. I became hyper-aware of everything, every meeting, every call, every whispered word. And slowly, I began to see cracks, not just in him, but in the people around him, the church, the image he projected. I realized the truth has power. And once revealed, it could change everything. I continued my subtle moves, testing, watching, learning. Every reaction, every flicker of fear was evidence, proof, validation. I was no longer just a victim. I was a strategist, a player. And with each ripple, the web of control began to shift. He had underestimated me, underestimated the strength of a betrayed heart. And now, the first consequences were unfolding. I could see it, feel it, taste it. The first move had hit, and the game had begun. The days after my first move, he was different, tense, careful, watching, calculating. Every glance he gave me, every word, every smile was weighed, measured. And I watched, waited, relished. But I couldn't get careless. One mistake, one slip, and I could be exposed. I began leaving subtle hints, not enough to reveal the truth, but enough to make him anxious. An email left open, a document slightly visible, a whispered question from a church member. Each action was a test, and each reaction proof. He started doubting everyone, his staff, his friends, even himself. The fear in his eyes, that spark of uncertainty, gave me courage. I realized power had shifted, even if just slightly. But revenge is not a straight line. Every step I took had consequences. One morning, a church elder approached me, quietly. "Be careful what you do, people talk, and sometimes things can get messy." I nodded, hiding the thrill, hiding the knowledge that he had no idea I was the one in control. Because at this point, subtlety was everything. One misstep, and my plan would collapse. I began documenting more, every meeting, every phone call, every suspicious activity. The web of evidence grew, growing stronger. I could feel the walls closing in on him, even as he remained unaware. At home, tension hung like a cloud, thick, suffocating. He tried to act normal, tried to pretend everything was fine. But I could see the cracks in his composure, the tiny slips, the hesitant gestures. And each one thrilled me, terrified me. One night, I left a small folder on his desk, just enough for him to notice. The next morning, I watched him discover it: confusion, panic, frustration. His hands shook slightly, his face pale, his voice tight. How did this happen?" He muttered, more to himself than to me. And I knew the first real ripple had hit. I stayed quiet, silent, letting him unravel. Because sometimes the most powerful weapon is patience. I began planning the next move, bigger, bolder, more dangerous. But danger was everywhere. If anyone saw my actions, if someone accused me, I could lose everything. Even the church, my reputation, my life. The fear made every step more thrilling, more careful, more deliberate. I became hyper-aware, noticing every detail, every hesitation, every lie. The first move had been subtle, but it was enough. He no longer trusted anyone fully, not even me. And that was only the beginning. I continued feeding small hints, carefully, strategically. A misplaced document here, a casual mention there, a friend subtly questioned. He began to second-guess, his confidence wavered, his control slipping. And all the while, I kept adding to my arsenal. Hidden messages, secret copies, notes, everything ready. Because one final move, one perfect moment, would change everything. And I knew that moment was coming. It had to be perfect, undeniable, shocking. But before that, the consequences of my subtle moves were already spreading. His colleagues whispered, rumors began forming, tension rose. And he had no idea who was behind it. That power, the fear he felt without knowing why, it was intoxicating. And I realized I had transformed from a silent victim to a careful, cunning strategist. Every heartbeat, every breath was part of the plan, and I could feel the storm building, ready to break. Soon, very soon, the world he thought he controlled would unravel, and there would be no turning back. The day came. I could feel it, the air heavy, the storm ready to break. He entered the church office, unaware, confident, still thinking he controlled everything. I waited silent, hidden, watching every step. His phone buzzed. I had sent another anonymous message, hinting at his secrets. He froze, glanced at it, panic flickered in his eyes. I stepped forward, my heart pounding, my hands steady. "You thought you could hide everything from me?" I said softly, deliberately. He looked up, startled, disbelief on his face. "What are you talking about?" he asked, voice tight, defensive. I held up my phone, messages, receipts, emails. All of it, every lie, every hidden meeting, every betrayal. I whispered. His face went pale, he opened his mouth, then closed it. You wouldn't dare," he stammered. "Dare? I already did," I replied calmly. The silence, heavy, broken only by the ticking of the clock. I watched him truly realize that the web he spun had been seen, recorded, documented. I took a deep breath, stepped closer. "You thought I was blind, that I would forgive, that I would stay silent." Tears filled his eyes, not from regret, but fear. "Please, you don't understand, it was never like that." "Never like that?" I echoed, voice cold, cutting. "You lied, you betrayed, you humiliated, and you thought you could keep it hidden?" He tried to reach for me. I stepped back, defensive. "Don't touch me," I snapped. I felt a strange mix of power and relief. The truth had finally come out, and it was glorious, terrifying, freeing. I handed him the folder, every proof, every secret, every step he thought was invisible. "You see? I knew everything, and now everyone else will too if I choose." His hands trembled, the facade shattered. I could see the fear, the panic, the guilt, all of it raw, exposed. "Please don't," he whispered. "Don't." I laughed softly, bitterly. "You should have thought of that before betraying me, before hiding, before lying." I turned and walked to the office door, leaving him there, trembling, broken. Outside, I could hear whispers, church members questioning, rumors spreading, tension rising. And I felt alive. For the first time in months, maybe years. I had power. I had control. I had justice. But the moment was not over. I had one final step, one final exposure. I walked back into the office, held his gaze. "Do you remember the woman you thought was nothing, who would never act?" I said, voice sharp, deliberate. "I am her," I continued, "and now you will see the truth, the consequences, and the cost." His knees shook, his face pale. The world we built, the life we shared crumbled before his eyes. And I stood strong, silent, confident. For once, I was no longer the victim. I was the storm. And he was drowning in the chaos he created. He sank into his chair, face pale, hands trembling. I stood over him, every breath measured, every step deliberate. "Do you feel it?" I asked softly, almost a whisper. "Feel what?" he stammered, panic rising. "The fear, the truth, the weight of your lies," I said. He swallowed hard, words failing him. You wouldn't," he whispered, voice breaking. "I already have," I replied calmly. Every secret, every lie, every betrayal, all laid bare. And he realized there was no escape. I could see it in his eyes, the panic, the desperation, the shame. "Please don't do this," he begged. "Too late," I said, voice cold sharp. Too late for trust, too late for forgiveness, too late for lies. The documents, the messages, the evidence lay on his desk. Every hidden meeting, every secret call, every lie exposed. I watched him struggle, trying to justify, trying to plead, trying to deny. But the truth doesn't lie, doesn't forgive, doesn't hide. I took a deep breath, letting the weight of it sink in. "Do you understand now?" I asked. His lips quivered silence. I walked slowly around him, my presence deliberate, powerful. "This is what happens when you betray someone who trusted you completely." I paused, watching, savoring, the realization washing over him. Every lie, every betrayal, every hidden act, now a chain around him. He tried to stand, to reach for me. "Don't touch me," I snapped, my voice sharp, cutting. He froze, fear flashing across his face. I could feel the tension, the fear, the power shift. Outside, the church whispers began, members noticing, tension rising. The facade of perfection shattering, slowly, painfully. I walked back to the desk, picked up a folder, handed it to him. "Everything you tried to hide, everything you thought was yours alone is now here in your hands, and everyone else's soon enough." He trembled, eyes wide, unable to speak. I leaned close, voice low, deliberate. "You thought I was blind, weak, obedient, silent. But I am none of those things now. And I will not be silent ever again." The fear in his eyes, the realization, the collapse, it was intoxicating. I had planned every step, every move, every subtle hint. And now, the final confrontation, the climax had arrived. I could see him unravel, his control slipping. And for the first time, I felt free, powerful, alive. "This is the price of betrayal," I said, voice calm, unyielding. He looked at me, desperate, defeated. And I walked away, leaving him with the evidence, the truth, the fear. I didn't need to yell, didn't need to fight. Because the weight of reality, the truth, was already crushing him. And I was standing tall, victorious, unbroken. The world we built, the lies we lived, the image he projected, all shattered by the one he thought he could control. And I was no longer his shadow. I was the force, the reckoning, the storm. The fear in his eyes, the panic in his voice, the weight of the truth. All proof that I had survived, that I had fought back. And that justice, even if slow, even if careful, had finally arrived. The office was silent, heavy, tense. He sat there, trembling, broken, defeated. I stood before him, calm, collected, in control. "Do you finally understand?" I asked softly, deliberately. "Understand what?" he whispered, voice barely audible. "The truth, the weight of your lies, the consequences of betrayal, the cost of hiding behind a mask," I said. He swallowed, words failing him. I didn't think. He stammered. "You didn't think?" I echoed, voice sharp, cutting. "You thought you could manipulate, deceive, control, and I would remain blind?" He looked away, unable to meet my gaze. "I trusted you," I said quietly, pain and anger mixed. "You promised, you swore, and all along it was a lie." Tears filled his eyes, but I didn't flinch. "Do you know what it feels like?" I asked, voice low, deliberate. "To live in the shadow of someone you trusted, to feel invisible, to be used, to be betrayed." He opened his mouth, closed it, nothing came. "You thought your words, your prayers, your image could protect you?" I continued. "But lies cannot protect you, and no mask can hide the truth forever." He shook finally, the fear real, the shame visible. I am sorry," he whispered, too little, too late. "Sorry?" I repeated, my voice ice sharp, unyielding. "Do you think sorry erases months, years of betrayal? Do you think it brings back the trust you destroyed?" He tried to stand, reach for me, but I stepped back. "Don't touch me," I snapped, cutting him off. I picked up the folder, the evidence, every hidden text, every secret meeting, every lie. "This is your truth, your life, exposed, because you thought you were untouchable." His face turned white, panic clear, voice shaking. "Please, I'll fix this. I'll make it right, just don't." "Too late," I said, voice cold, deliberate. "You lost that right the moment you betrayed me, the moment you hid your actions, the moment you thought I was blind." I left the folder on the desk, evidence laid bare. The church whispers outside had grown louder, members sensing tension, rumors spreading. He was cornered, exposed, powerless. "You underestimated me," I said softly, almost a whisper. You thought I would remain silent, weak, obedient, afraid. But I am none of those things now. And you will never underestimate me again. I turned to leave, walking slowly, savoring every step. His eyes followed me, haunted, desperate, broken. I felt a strange mix of relief and emptiness. Because revenge, even when complete, leaves a scar. I paused at the door, looked back once. Remember this, betrayal has consequences, and I will never be your victim again. The weight of the moment hung heavy, the silence deafening. And as I walked away, I knew the storm had passed. But the world we knew, the life we shared, would never return. He remained surrounded by his lies, exposed, shattered. And I finally felt the power of truth, of survival, of justice. I didn't yell, didn't fight, didn't need to. The truth had done it all. And in that moment, I realized strength comes not from revenge alone, but from surviving, from standing tall, from reclaiming yourself. The ultimate confrontation, complete, irreversible, final. And though my heart ached and those scars remained, I had won. Not just over him, but over fear, over betrayal, over the silence that had nearly destroyed me. And as I stepped out, the sunlight hit my face, warm, real, free. I took a deep breath, the weight lifted slightly, the storm behind me, and I whispered softly, to no one, to everyone, I survived, I am free, and I will never be silenced again. The days after the confrontation were quiet, strangely heavy. The storm had passed, but the aftermath lingered. He avoided me, distant, broken, carefully, silently. I returned to my life, to routines, to solitude. And yet the emptiness lingered. Revenge, it satisfies in part, but it leaves scars, deep ones. Every memory of betrayal, every step of planning, every moment of fear, they stayed with me, haunting, persistent. I realized revenge is not freedom, not peace. It is power, temporary, sharp, intoxicating. But the heart, the soul still feels, still aches. I tried to sleep, nights filled with thoughts, memories, what could have been. And sometimes I cried silently alone. Because even though justice was done, even though the truth prevailed, I had lost a part of myself. The woman I was before the lies, before the betrayal, before the storm. She was gone, replaced by someone stronger, but wary, cautious, hardened. Friends noticed, some avoided, unsure, afraid of the tension. Church life continued, but differently, quietly, awkwardly. The whispers never fully stopped. And I moved forward, carefully, deliberately. I found solace in small things, moments of quiet, walks alone, or reading, writing. I reminded myself strength is not just in revenge. It is in surviving, in standing tall, in refusing to be silenced. I thought about him sometimes briefly. Not with anger, not with longing, but with recognition of what had been and what could never be again. I learned betrayal changes everything, leaves scars, but also lessons. I met people slowly, cautiously, trusting again, but differently. Life continued, imperfect, fragile, but mine. And I realized peace, real peace, comes not from revenge, but from reclaiming yourself. From letting go of anger, not pretending it never existed. From standing in the sunlight, feeling it warm, breathing alive. I would never forget the pain, the betrayal, the strategy, the storm. But I would not be defined by it either. Some nights, I sat quietly, thinking, reflecting, and I whispered softly to the empty room, I survived. I am whole. I am free, even if the scars remain. And in that silence, I found a fragile, imperfect peace. Life had moved on slowly, painfully, but it moved. I understood now. Revenge, power, exposure, confrontation. They can topple liars, destroy pretenses, but they cannot heal a wounded heart. Healing comes from within, from reclaiming your own life. I had done that in my own way. And those scars remain. I can look in the mirror and recognize strength, resilience, survival. I am not the same, but I am me. And that is something no betrayal, no lie, no storm can ever take away. Some revenge satisfies, but true freedom, true peace, comes from surviving and living again. If this story resonated with you, or brought back memories of trust and betrayal, take a moment to reflect on it and share your thoughts below. Your experiences and feelings matter, and reading them can create a community of understanding and support. If you want more emotionally intense, real-life Storytime videos, make sure to subscribe and turn on notifications so you never miss a story that touches the heart. Thank you for watching and being part of this journey. Your presence truly matters.